Hello, dreamers, and welcome to this 304th episode of California Dreaming. This is just going to be a quick look at the case that has been dominating the news for the past 2 weeks. And it all happened to start on my birthday, December 4th. We have been bogged down with some pretty in-depth cases, so I thought I'd take a break from it for a bit and take a look at this still unfolding story. I'm in the middle of working on Patreon, but I didn't want to get started on anything that's going to take a long time. So I'm going to throw in this episode just to break up the monotony a little bit. So I will bypass all the formalities and we will get right to it. This is the assassination of a CEO, what we know about Brian Thompson and Luigi Mangione. On December 4th, 2024, 50-year-old UnitedHealthCare CEO Brian Thompson was shot and killed in Manhattan, New York City, New York, at about 6:45 in the morning. The shooting happened just outside the Midtown New York Hilton Hotel. However, Brian was staying across the street at the Marriott. He had traveled to New York for an annual meeting with United Health Group investors, under which UnitedHealthCare operates. He was headed to that meeting when he was shot, which was being held at the Hilton. UnitedHealthCare is the fourth largest public company in the United States, according to SkyNews.com. But when I looked it up 12 days after the killing, I found that it had dropped down to fifth place behind Berkshire Hathaway, Apple, Walmart, and JP Morgan Chase at the top spot. Brian was making his way towards the hotel when he was allegedly approached from behind by a masked gunman and shot multiple times in the back and leg. In one report I read, he was shot once in the chest, but I'm not completely sure if that may have been an exit wound from the back or if it was fired at him from the front. He fell to the ground and the shooter quickly left the scene. 911 was called right away. Police were the first to arrive about 2 minutes later to find Brian still alive, but despite the rapid response, nothing could be done to save his life. Brian Thompson was later pronounced dead at Mount Sinai Hospital. Thompson became the CEO of UnitedHealthCare in April of 2021. In the time since he ascended to that position, he had been hit with a barrage of criticism for his company's policies when it came to rejecting insurance claims. In addition to that, his family reported that he had received a number of death threats, his widow having indicated that the threats were a result of what has been described as the company's, quote, lack of coverage related to their clients' insurance claims. The hunt for Thompson's killer lasted 5 days after a surveillance camera image of the shooter was released to the media, showing a young man in a tan or green hoodie smiling as he spoke to the woman working at the hostel he was staying at. The suspect was ultimately recognized by an alert McDonald's employee in Altoona, Pennsylvania, where he was quickly apprehended by law enforcement. The smiling hooded suspect was finally identified as 26-year-old Luigi Mangione, and we'll talk more about him a little later in this episode. He's since been charged with first-degree murder. Well, at first he was charged with second-degree murder, but now those charges have been elevated to first-degree murder. As far as I know, Luigi is still being held in a Pennsylvania jail. He's been denied bond and is awaiting extradition back to New York, where his charges await him. At the time of his arrest, Luigi Mangione had in his possession a 3D printed gun along with the 3D printed suppressor, which does what it sounds like it's supposed to do. It suppresses, muffles, or silences the sound of the gunfire. Mangione also had a letter with him that some have described as being a manifesto of sorts, where he condemned the healthcare system in the United States. He also had his passport on him, several fake IDs, and among those IDs was the one that he allegedly used to check in to the Upper West Side hostel he was staying at. Investigators have also said that they've identified fingerprints near the scene of the shooting that came back as a match to Mangione. When he was arrested after being identified at the McDonald's, the initial charges he was held on included possession of an unlicensed firearm, providing false information to police, and forgery. But his warrant for his arrest out of New York had a total of 5 charges, including second-degree murder for now, but like I said, those have been elevated, and weapons charges. The speculation amongst investigators is that Mangione was motivated to carry out this assassination by the Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski, and the essay that he wrote entitled Industrial Society and Its Future. We've talked about manifestos here on this show and Ted Kaczynski years back when we covered the Isla Vista shooter, Elliot Rodger. I talked about his manifesto a lot across 3 episodes. I want to say that was back in 2018, so it's been a little while. Mangione's manifesto has been described as a short handwritten letter to federal law enforcement, but the contents of this so-called manifesto have not been made public yet. It's also been said that Mangione was additionally motivated to carry out this killing due to a serious back injury that he suffered and the care and coverage he received or did not receive related to this injury. The reaction to Brian Thompson's killing has been somewhat of a mixed bag. There has been a tremendous amount of disdain and contempt aimed at the CEO and the company that he headed for their policies as a part of the largely criticized healthcare system in this country. The CEO has been lambasted and mocked, while his killer has been shown an overwhelming amount of sympathy and being hailed as a hero, as the killing has been overwhelmingly deemed as justified and well-deserved. And this attitude towards Brian Thompson and UnitedHealthCare stems from a great deal of anger and frustration over not only to the company's business practices, which includes excessively high rates of coverage denial for their clients and patients who need potentially life-saving procedures, services, or medications, but it has really turned into a much bigger criticism and nationwide conversation as to the healthcare industry in this country as a whole. UnitedHealthCare covers about 49 million people in the United States and raked in more than $280 billion in revenue in 2023, according to an Associated Press article dated December 4th, 2024. In it, the article was headlined, UnitedHealthCare CEO kept a low public profile, and then he was shot to death in New York. It read, in part, Brian Thompson led one of the biggest health insurers in the United States, but was unknown to millions of people his decisions affected. Then Wednesday's targeted fatal shooting on a Midtown Manhattan sidewalk thrust the executive and his business into the national spotlight. Thompson, who was 50, has worked at the giant United Health Group, Inc. for 20 years and ran the insurance arm since 2021 after running its Medicare and retirement business. As CEO, Thompson led a firm that provides health coverage to more than 49 million Americans, more than the population of Spain. UnitedHealthCare is the largest provider of Medicare Advantage plans, the privately run versions of the U.S. government's Medicare program for people aged 65 and older. The company also sells individual insurance and administers health insurance coverage for thousands of employers and state and federally funded Medicaid programs. The business run by Thompson brought in $281 billion in revenue last year, making it the largest subsidiary of Minnetonka, Minnesota-based United Health Group. Thompson's $10.2 million annual pay package included salary, bonuses, and stock option awards, making him one of the company's highest-paid executives. The University of Iowa graduate began his career as a certified public accountant at PwC and had little name recognition beyond the healthcare industry. Even to investors who own its stock, the parent company's face belonged to CEO Andrew Whitty, a knighted British triathlete who has testified before Congress. When Thompson did occasionally draw attention, it was because of his role in shaping the way Americans get health care. Healthcare should be easier for people, Thompson said at the time. We are cognizant of the challenges, but navigating a future through value-based care unlocks a situation where the family doesn't have to make the decisions on their own. Thompson drew attention in 2021 when the insurer, like its competitors, was widely criticized for a plan to start denying payment for what it deemed non-critical visits to hospital emergency rooms. Patients are not medical experts and should not be expected to self-diagnose during what they believe is a medical emergency, the chief executive of the American Hospital Association wrote in an open letter addressed to Brian Thompson. Threatening patients with a financial penalty for making the wrong decision could have a chilling effect on seeking emergency care, UnitedHealthCare responded by delaying the rollout of this change. Thompson, who lived in a Minneapolis suburb, was the married father of 2 sons in high school, and he was set to speak at an investor meeting in Midtown New York at the Hilton Hotel. Now, dreamers, Brian Thompson was married, but he and his wife had been separated for a number of years. They had been living in separate homes about a mile apart from each other, and they had decided to not get divorced for the time being for the sake of their children. And from what I've come to understand, the separation happened after Thompson was appointed as the CEO of UnitedHealthCare, and it has been reported that the stress of the job may have hastened the decision to separate. Thompson was on his own and about to enter the Hilton Hotel when he was shot in the back by a masked assailant who fled on foot before pedaling an e-bike into Central Park a few blocks away, the New York Police Department said. Chief of Detectives Joseph Kenney said investigators were looking at Thompson's social media accounts and interviewing employees and family members. It did not seem like he had any issues at all, Kenney said. He did not have a security detail. And that is all the AP article said at the time. It was released the same day of the shooting, so the story was still developing, still very early on in the investigation, and I mean, it still is. However, what caught my attention was the open letter to Brian Thompson that was written by the American Hospital Association executive. It took a little bit of a Google dig, but I found the letter, so I'm going to share that with you too. It includes footnotes related to the statistics the author of the letter included, along with links at the bottom of it. So if you decide to go and look at it, I provided a link for you. The open letter was dated June 8, 2021, so just barely 2 months after Thompson ascended to the position of CEO at UnitedHealthCare. The link to it is in my show notes, but I'll read it to you in its entirety. It says, "Dear Mr. Thompson, America's hospital and health systems are deeply concerned by UnitedHealthCare's recent policy announcement to allow for the retroactive denial of coverage for emergency-level care in facilities. This policy would put patients' health and well-being in jeopardy, and we urge you to reverse the policy immediately. Patients are not medical experts and should not be expected to self-diagnose during what they believe is a medical emergency. Threatening patients with a financial penalty for making the wrong decision could have a chilling effect on seeking emergency care. This is dangerous for patients' health at any time, but is particularly unsafe in the midst of a public health emergency. Deferred and delayed care during the pandemic has already contributed to adverse health conditions and increased acuity. This is exactly why federal law requires insurers to adhere to the prudent layperson standard, which prohibits insurers from putting up coverage roadblocks to emergency services, such as determining retroactively whether a service will be covered based on the patient's final diagnosis. UnitedHealthCare's own guidance to its enrollees regarding when to access emergency services is vague and could confuse patients, especially in light of this new policy. For example, one UnitedHealthCare webpage specifically tells enrollees, "Do not ignore an emergency. Take action if a situation seems life-threatening. Head to your nearest emergency room or call 911 or your local emergency number right away." That same webpage then overgeneralizes symptoms that UnitedHealthCare suggests are appropriate for urgent care. This includes symptoms that could be signs of medical emergencies depending on the cause and severity, such as stomach pain, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, or abnormal vaginal bleeding. UnitedHealthCare may believe inappropriate use of the emergency room is a widespread problem. However, there is limited evidence to support this. Regardless, the policy brings potentially severe consequences and raises significant questions about the criteria UnitedHealthCare will use to determine emergency services coverage. For example, has UnitedHealthCare assessed whether its enrollees have enough providers available during non-traditional hours, such as evenings and weekends? Has it helped its enrollees connect with a primary care provider? Do its networks offer sufficient access to alternate sites of care? And will UnitedHealthCare cover the care provided at those sites without excessive administrative barriers? Also, can UnitedHealthCare confirm in writing that if the facility attests that a case met the prudent layperson standard, that the services will be covered? In addition, we also urge UnitedHealthCare to evaluate whether its other policies that restrict enrollees' coverage for a wide range of hospital outpatient department services may contribute to access challenges for patients. For example, UnitedHealthCare has announced policies that would reduce or eliminate coverage for certain hospital-based surgeries, laboratory and other diagnostic services, specialty pharmacy therapies, and evaluation and management services, including those provided in the emergency department, as well as those that constitute primary care. If UnitedHealthCare is successful in denying coverage for these services in hospital outpatient departments, it could exacerbate UnitedHealthCare's concerns regarding emergency department use. UnitedHealthCare acknowledges that this policy change is financially motivated and suggests that the savings associated with it will accrue to consumers. We question whether this is true. Despite implementing policies to restrict enrollee coverage over the past several years, UnitedHealthCare premiums continue to rise in most markets, as do UnitedHealthCare's profits. As you know, UnitedHealthCare's parent company, UnitedHealth Group, posted a 35% year-over-year jump in operating profits in the first quarter of 2021. Despite earning $6.7 billion in a single quarter, UnitedHealthCare enrollees are being asked to pay more for their coverage. Individuals and families who purchase health insurance deserve reliable, worry-free coverage that meets their care needs and complies with all applicable patient protection laws. We urge you to rescind this and other policies that restrict patients' access to care and put patients' health outcomes at risk. Sincerely, Richard J. Pollock. So what does this all mean? In other words, UnitedHealthCare, under the leadership of Brian Thompson, was set to roll out a plan that would begin denying payment for any visits its clients make to the emergency room if they, whoever they is, the powers that be, the people in their offices at their computers who don't know any of these patients personally, or their medical histories, I suppose, or it gets worse than that, and we'll get to it in a minute. But those who they decide, whatever this person had, and they decided that they needed to go to the ER, could have been taken care of at home with bloodletting. They want to go back to the 1800s and treat them with that and some fermented fruit juice to help you sleep. Yeah, I'm just kidding, but the idea was to start denying anything that they thought was an unnecessary trip to the ER. UnitedHealthCare was also taking a lot of flack for the manner in which it handled its clients' insurance claims. In fact, UnitedHealthCare, along with several other insurers, this is an industry issue, not just a UnitedHealthCare issue. It's just UnitedHealthCare is the largest provider in the United States. But anyway, it and several other insurance companies were named in a report from 2 months ago, so just this past October, issued by the United States Senate Homeland Security Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations, showed a surge in prior authorization denials for Medicare Advantage patients. Under Thompson's reign as CEO, the company he led also began using artificial intelligence to make automated claim denials, leading to patients being denied access to medical care by artificial intelligence. So a moment ago, I told you that someone sitting in an office or a cubicle in front of a computer was just sitting there denying patient claims, when in reality, it was an AI model that had taken over. In addition, the rate at which post-acute care, which is aftercare or support care during a person's recovery, the rate at which post-acute care claims were denied more than doubled from 2020 to 2022. United Health Group was slapped with a class action lawsuit in November of 2023 that alleged the company began using NH-Predict, which is an AI model that has been found to have a 90% error rate. I looked up the class action lawsuit. The link to it is in the show notes, but I will share with you what it stated just in the introduction of the 46-page document. This class action lawsuit listed the estate of Jean B. Loken and Dale Henry Tetzloff as plaintiffs individually and on behalf of all others similarly situated as the class or classes by and through their attorneys. They bring this class action lawsuit against defendants United Health Group, Inc., UnitedHealthCare, Inc., Navi Health, and Does 1 through 50, and Does meaning like John and Jane Does, collectively, defendants or United Healthcare, and alleges the following. This putative class action arises from defendants' illegal deployment of artificial intelligence, or AI, in place of real medical professionals to wrongfully deny elderly patients care owed to them under Medicare Advantage plans by overriding their treating physician's determinations as to medically necessary care based on an AI model that defendants know has a 90% error rate. Despite the high error rate, defendants continue to systematically deny claims using their flawed AI model because they know that only a tiny minority of policyholders, roughly 0.2%, will appeal denied claims, and the vast majority will either pay out-of-pocket costs or forego the remainder of their prescribed post-acute care. Defendants bank on the patient's impaired conditions, lack of knowledge, and lack of resources to appeal the erroneous AI decisions. The fraudulent scheme affords defendants a clear financial windfall in the form of policy premiums without having to pay for promised care, while the elderly are prematurely kicked out of care facilities nationwide or forced to deplete family savings to continue receiving necessary medical care, all because an AI model disagrees with their real-life doctor's determinations. Defendant United Health Group, Inc. is the nation's largest insurance company. UnitedHealthCare, Inc., the insurance arm of UnitedHealthCare Group, provides health insurance plans for 52.9 million Americans. Defendants state that their quote-unquote mission is to help people live healthier lives and make the health system work better for everyone. In reality, defendants systematically deployed an AI algorithm to prematurely and in bad faith discontinue payment for healthcare services for elderly individuals with serious diseases and injuries. These healthcare services are known as post-acute care. Defendants' AI model, known as NH-Predict, determines Medicare Advantage patients' coverage criteria in post-acute settings with rigid and unrealistic predictions for recovery. Relying on the NH-Predict AI model, defendants purport to predict how much care an elderly patient should require, but overrides real doctors' determinations as to the amount of care a patient in fact requires in order to recover. As such, defendants make coverage determinations not based on individual patient needs, but based on the outputs of the NH-Predict AI model, resulting in the inappropriate denial of necessary care prescribed by the patient's doctors. Defendants' implementation of the AI model resulted in a significant increase in the number of post-acute coverage denials. Defendants intentionally limit their employees' discretion to deviate from the AI model predication by setting up targets to keep stays at skilled nursing facilities within 1% of the days projected by the AI model. Employees who deviate from the NH Predict AI model projections are disciplined and terminated regardless of whether the patient required more care. The AI model saves defendants money by allowing them to deny claims that they are obligated to pay and otherwise would have paid by eliminating the labor costs associated with paying doctors and other medical professionals for the time needed to conduct an individualized manual review of each of its insured claims. Defendants also utilize the AI model to aggressively deny coverage because they know they will not be held accountable for wrongful denials. In many instances, defendants purposefully shift the financial responsibilities of funding post-acute care of their insureds to American taxpayers. In their coverage denial letters, defendants inform patients who qualify for Medicare that their coverage is being denied solely due to their Medicare eligibility. Defendants direct these patients to enroll in the government-subsidized Medicare program while failing to cover care for which they are contractually and statutorily obligated to cover. Plaintiffs and class members had their post-acute care coverage wrongfully terminated by the defendants using the AI model. Defendants failed to use reasonable standards in evaluating the individual claims of the plaintiffs and class members and instead allowed their coverage needs to be wholly determined by AI. By engaging in this misconduct, the defendants breached their fiduciary duties, including their duties of good faith and fair dealing, because their conduct serves defendants' own self-interest and elevates defendants' interest above the interest of the insureds. By bringing this action, plaintiffs seek to remedy defendants' past improper and unlawful conduct by recovering damage to which plaintiffs and the class are rightfully entitled and enjoin defendants from continuing to perpetrate its scheme against its Medicare Advantage insureds. United Health Group was also the target of a protest this year back in September. On Friday, September 13, 2024, a little less than 3 months before Brian Thompson was shot to death, there was a demonstration outside the United Health Group headquarters in Eden Prairie, Minnesota. The target of the demonstration was Optum, the subsidiary and pharmacy services arm of United Health Group. In an article written by Christopher Snowbeck for the Minnesota Star Tribune published on that same day, the headline read, "Rally Outside Optum Headquarters Spotlights Debate Over Pharmacy Benefit Managers." About 50 people gathered in Eden Prairie to allege biggest players in the industry are ballooning drug costs while running independent pharmacies out of business, a claim that Optum denies. The article says, and I'm quoting directly, so the link is in the show notes, critics of the pharmacy benefit manager industry protested Friday outside the Eden Prairie headquarters of Optum, bringing to the company's campus allegations that business practices by the nation's largest pharmacy benefit managers are driving up medication costs and forcing independent pharmacies out of business. As a result, patients have fewer choices and more trouble paying for drugs that they need, said pharmacist John Hoshen, owner of St. Paul Corner Drug. People go without services they need for their greed, Hoshen said at a rally across the street from Optum's headquarters with about 50 attendees. Optum is the health services division of Minnetonka-based United Health Group, which also owns giant health insurer UnitedHealthCare. The company's Optum Rx division is one of the nation's 3 largest pharmacy benefit managers that negotiate drug prices with manufacturers and structure medication benefits within health plans. In a statement, Optum Rx said it has been working to ensure pharmacies are paid fairly while offering to help them operate more efficiently. The company said it's partnering with pharmacists to provide reimbursement for all the services that they provide, including managing patient medications, and connecting people with help for basic needs such as food, nutrition, and transportation. Scrutiny of the pharmacy benefit manager industry has grown in recent years. An ongoing Federal Trade Commission study published in July found evidence to suggest that pharmacy benefit managers may have inflated drug costs and squeezed independent pharmacies while enriching some of the largest companies in the country. In June, Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison led a bipartisan group of 32 attorney generals asking the U.S. Supreme Court to review a case that otherwise threatens relatively new state regulations of pharmacy benefit managers. Last year, 2 large public sector employee groups in Minnesota followed the example of a few other states in trying to reverse auction technology to address what some see as competition and transparency flaws in awarding pharmacy benefit manager contracts. The Pharmaceutical Care Management Association, the trade group for the pharmacy benefit managers, pushed back on all fronts, arguing that pharmacy benefit managers have a track record of delivering savings in a competitive market where new regulations threaten to add costs, and some critics have ties to pharmaceutical manufacturers. On Friday, Optum Rx pointed to data from the trade group showing the number of independent U.S. pharmacies has increased by 5.8% from 2014 to 2024. But State Senator Glenn Gruenhagen, he said during the rally that the number of independent pharmacies in Minnesota has dropped from 550 in 1996 to just 156 last year. Gruenhagen said his district, west of the Twin Cities, lost 3 independent pharmacies in the past few years. It's just they're social engineering you out of business, Gruenhagen said. Pharmacy benefit managers don't manufacture or deliver health care, they simply manipulate the profits. The event, which drew participants from Minnesota and other states, was organized by 3 advocacy groups, including Arizona-based Pharmacists United for Truth and Transparency. Before the rally, protesters marched on sidewalks at the perimeter of Optum's campus, among them Deborah Kevaney, an independent pharmacist in Winstead. Part of the concern with pharmacy benefit managers, Kevaney said, is they set copays and dispensing rules in ways that effectively steer patients and their prescriptions away from the independents and towards their own mail order and specialty pharmacies. In addition, she said, pharmacy benefit manager reimbursements are below pharmacy costs. Many of our brand name prescriptions were actually losing money when we dispense them, Kevaney said. Independent pharmacies are closing every day because of the practices of pharmacy benefit managers. Just as Optum Rx is a part of UnitedHealth Group, the 2 other big pharmacy benefit managers in the United States, Caremark and Express Scripts, are part of giant healthcare corporations, Rhode Island-based CVS Health and Connecticut-based Cigna. The massive size of these companies, Hoshin said, is part of the problem. This is an unnecessary layer in the middle that's just sucking money out of our healthcare system and absolutely destroying access to care, he said in an interview. Earlier this year, UnitedHealth Group's chief executive was questioned in Congress about whether his company has grown too big at a hearing where Senator Elizabeth Warren called it a monopoly on steroids. CEO Andrew Whitty responded by saying that despite its size, UnitedHealth Group owns no hospitals, does not manufacture drugs, and only has an affiliation agreement, not outright ownership, with most of Optum's medical group partners. The Senate hearing focused on a cyber attack on a UnitedHealth Group subsidiary called Change Healthcare that caused chaos for many hospitals and medical firms in getting paid for services. Company officials have suggested that its size helped United better respond to the fallout from the hack, which forced the shutdown of a widely used healthcare data clearinghouse. In its statement on Friday, Optum Rx said the company is removing retroactive recoupment or clawbacks for pharmacies and offering predictive analytics and conciliation tools to further reduce the administrative burden and allow more time to focus on patient care. And dreamers, for those of you like me who didn't know what a clawback was, that basically means that UnitedHealthCare was taking back money from pharmacies that they had already paid out after they later decided that they would not cover the costs of the prescriptions that they had already filled. And in the definition I found on Investopedia.com, it said that sometimes there would be a penalty attached to the demand for repayment if the pharmacy was not in compliance, which is just insane to me, especially if we're talking about small, independent mom and pop pharmacies where UnitedHealthCare is trying to get money back that they've already paid them out. At the end of the article, it said, "Frontline pharmacy workers play a vital role in supporting people's health," OptumRx stated. Now, they mentioned a hack, and they kind of glossed over it, so I want to get into that a little bit more because this is very interesting to me as well. We mentioned the name Andrew Whitty. He's the CEO of United Health Group, the whole parent company. He was made to testify before Congress earlier in 2024, in May, if I'm not mistaken. It might have been in March. I can't remember. I think it was in May. Yeah, May. And in this article here that I just read to you in the Minnesota Star, you heard me mention that this Senate hearing was about a data hack or a data breach, and that Andrew Whitty, the CEO, was called to Congress to testify about this. Well, the article, for whatever reason, left out the fact that UnitedHealthCare ended up paying out $22 million to whoever was behind that hack. So let me tell you a little bit more about that, because they tried to ignore it or pretend like it didn't happen for about 2 months following the hack. In an article on Reuters dated March 5th, 2024 by Raphael Satter, the headline reads, "Hacker Forum Post Claims that United Health paid $22 million ransom in bid to recover data." It says, a post on a hacker forum popular with cyber criminals has claimed that United Health Group paid $22 million in a bid to recover access to data and systems encrypted by the Black Cat ransomware gang, according to 2 researchers. Neither United Health nor the hackers involved have commented on the alleged ransom payment, but a cryptocurrency tracing firm partially corroborated the claim on Monday. It is not uncommon for large companies that have been victimized by ransomware gangs to decide to pay the hackers to regain control of their networks, especially in instances where a significant disruption to customers and partners occurred. The forum post dated Sunday, that would have been this past March 3rd, 2024, said a partner of Black Cat was responsible for the intrusion into United Health. The message, allegedly from the partner, included a link showing that someone had moved about 350 bitcoins, now worth about $23 million, as the value of the cryptocurrency rises, from one digital currency wallet to another. The owner or owners of the respective wallets is not publicly available, but blockchain analysis firm TRM Labs said the destination of the funds was associated with Alpha V, also known as Black Cat, noting that it had seen that address used to collect payments from other Black Cat victims. Asked whether it had paid the ransom, United Health said that it was focused on the investigation and recovery. Black Cat has not responded to repeated messages from Reuters sent over several days. Reuters could not immediately determine how to reach the purported partner hacker group or to access the cybercrime forum where the post was made, although it was able to view screenshots taken independently by 2 researchers. The break-in at United Health's Change Healthcare unit, which sparked disruption across the United States, has been the object of online intrigue. Black Cat claimed that last week it had stolen millions of sensitive records in the hack, only to quickly delete its post without explanation. Meanwhile, the pain has continued to spread across the U.S. medical system as Change Healthcare's billing services remain paralyzed. The American Medical Association on Monday asked the Biden administration to make emergency funds available to physicians hurt by the outage. So now, in an article on Wired.com dated April 22nd, 2024, provided an update about this hack. Written by Andy Greenberg, the headline reads, Change Healthcare, which is the company that owns UnitedHealthcare's Minnetonka's headquarters, finally admits that it paid ransomware hackers $22 million and still faces a patient data leak. The company belatedly conceded both that it had paid the cybercriminals extorting it and that the patient data nonetheless ended up on the dark web. More than 2 months after the start of a ransomware debacle, whose impact ranks among the worst in the history of cybersecurity, the medical firm Change Healthcare finally confirmed what cybercriminals, security researchers, and Bitcoin's blockchain had already made all too clear, that it did indeed pay a $22 million ransom to the hackers who targeted the company in February, and yet it still faces the risk of losing vast amounts of consumer-sensitive medical data. In a statement sent to Wired and other news outlets on Monday evening, Change Healthcare wrote that it paid a ransom to a cyber criminal group extorting the company, a hacker gang known as Alpha V or Black Cat. A ransom was paid as a part of the company's commitment to do all it could do to protect patient data from disclosure, the statement read. The company's belated admission of that payment accompanied a new post on its website where it warns that hackers may have stolen health-related data that would cover a substantial portion of people in America. Cybersecurity and cryptocurrency researchers have told Wired last month that Change Healthcare appeared to have paid that ransom on March 1, 2024, pointing to a transaction of 350 bitcoins or roughly $22 million sent into a crypto wallet associated with the Black Cat hackers. That transaction was first highlighted in a message on a Russian cybercriminal forum known as RAMP, where one of Black Cat's allegedly jilted partners complained that they had not received their cut of Change Healthcare's payment. However, for weeks following the transaction, which was publicly visible on Bitcoin's blockchain that had been received by Black Cat, Change Healthcare repeatedly declined to confirm that it had paid the ransom. The article that I read to you on Wire, it goes on and on about the hack and all the implications of it, about cryptocurrency and all this other stuff that I really don't want to get into. But it basically talks about how paying these ransoms only fuels a vicious cycle when these companies pay them. They're effectively rewarding the hackers for incredibly damaging attacks, and this one in particular, where the hackers were paid one of the largest ransoms to date. It suggests to potential future hackers that healthcare corporations are incredibly profitable targets because of the potential risk that they pose to patients' health. And in this case, with Change Healthcare, this mess turned into a double cross of epic proportions, which can potentially continue to snowball. The Black Cat ransomware, from all anyone can see, faked its own takedown by law enforcement after getting the $22 million in payment in order to avoid sharing their profits with other quote-unquote affiliates, aka the hacker who partnered with them, who actually penetrated Change Healthcare. In addition to that, Change Healthcare was hit by a second ransomware group who claimed that they were the ones who obtained the stolen data from their so-called affiliates, and they still wanted to be paid out more. Of this, the article said, this has created a situation where Change Healthcare's payment provides little assurance that its compromised data still won't be exploited by disgruntled hackers. These affiliates work for multiple groups, they're concerned with getting themselves paid, and there's no trusting thieves. If someone screws someone else, you don't know what they're going to do with the data. All that means is Change Healthcare still has little assurance that it had avoided an even worse scenario than it had already yet faced, paying what may be one of the biggest ransoms in history and still seeing its data spilled onto the dark web. If it gets leaked after they paid the $22 million, it's pretty much like setting that money on fire. They'd have burned that money for nothing. And in a footnote at the end of the article, it said, update on May 1st, 2024, United Health Group CEO Andrew Whitty confirmed to a U.S. Senate committee that the company did pay the $22 million in ransom. So yeah, that's pretty unsettling if you ask me. All right, enough about that garbage. Let's get into the events on the morning of December 4th, 2024, outside the Hilton Hotel in Midtown Manhattan. The following information is from an article on Newsweek.com published on December 5th, written by Martha McHardy, with the headline reading, Brian Thompson shooting timeline, maps show how killing unfolded. A manhunt continues for the suspect after the CEO of UnitedHealthCare, Brian Thompson, was fatally shot in New York in what police are calling a premeditated, pre-planned, targeted attack. Thompson, 50, was on his way to speak at United Health Group's investor conference at the Hilton Hotel in Midtown Manhattan on Wednesday morning when he was shot and killed. He was struck at least once in the back and once in the right calf, Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch said in a news conference. A manhunt is now underway after the suspect fled the scene, with police offering a reward of up to $10,000 for information that leads to an arrest. The FBI did add an additional $50,000 later on, bringing the total reward being offered to $60,000. The article continued, no information on a motive for the killing has been released, but police say they believe the shooting was targeted. The motive for this murder is currently unknown, but based on the evidence we have so far, it does appear that the victim was specifically targeted. Chief of Detectives Joseph Kenney told reporters, but at this point, we don't know why. The following is a timeline that I put together from the Newsweek.com article, as well as an article published on NBCnews.com. Both of them are linked in the show notes of this episode. Sunday, November 24th, at 10:11 p.m., Luigi Mangione arrived in New York City. He was seen on video getting off a Greyhound bus at the Port Authority bus terminal at 42nd Street and 8th Avenue. But the bus originated in Atlanta, Georgia, but had 6 or 7 stops along the way. Investigators are unsure when Mangione boarded the bus. After he arrived at the Port Authority, he took a cab to the vicinity of the Hilton Hotel and remained there for about 30 minutes. This was what they described as him casing the joint. Around 11 p.m., Mangione took a cab to the High New York City Hostel on Amsterdam Avenue on Manhattan's Upper West Side. This is when his full unmasked face was captured on CCTV during a moment when he was being a little flirty with the female clerk who was checking him in. Friday, November 29th. On that day, Mangione was checked out of the hostel, but police believe that it was an administrative checkout because he did not show back up at the required time. The hostel that Mangione stayed at apparently had a policy that you had to be back at a certain time or you will lose your spot. It's a situation where you only pay for the bed that you sleep in. The space is communal and typically considered budget-friendly, an accommodation option especially favorable if you're traveling alone or you don't mind sharing space with strangers. Mangione did check back in the same day that he was automatically checked out, but police don't think he stayed anywhere else. He had 2 roommates whom he did not know. He kept his mask on the whole time. He wore masks like we all did during COVID. They said he only pulled his mask down when he would take bites of food. He paid for his spot in cash, but he did provide an ID, though it was later determined to be fake. Wednesday, December 4th. At 5:30 a.m. on Wednesday, December 4th, Mangione left the hostel. Police believe that he traveled by bicycle. At 5:41 a.m., video surveillance showed him at 54th Street and 6th Avenue, the location of the Hilton Hotel. On video, Mangione is seen wandering around, walking in the vicinity of the hotel, walking back and forth on 54th Street, At some point, he entered a Starbucks and made a purchase. At 6:15 a.m., Mangione was seen leaving the 57th Street F train subway stop. The NBC timeline included a few more specifics at this point. Mangione was seen at the Starbucks on 6th Avenue near the Hilton Hotel at 6:17 a.m. The NYPD released images of him at the Starbucks wearing a hooded jacket with most of his face covered. He was carrying a backpack. He purchased a coffee, water, and granola bars. This Starbucks is located 2 blocks away from the Hilton Hotel where the conference was being held at. Mangione was captured on video throwing the cup and water bottle away. At 6:39 a.m., Mangione arrived at the scene of the shooting outside the Hilton, where he is said to have been lying in wait for several minutes before Brian Thompson arrived at the scene. According to an NYPD press conference, several people passed by Mangione, but it appeared that he was waiting for an intended target. 1 minute after Mangione arrived at the scene, Brian Thompson left the hotel that he was staying at across the street, which was the Marriott, and started to make his way towards the Hilton. 4 minutes later, at 6:44 a.m., as Brian Thompson was just steps from the entrance of the Hilton Hotel, where he was scheduled to speak at a UnitedHealthCare annual investor conference, is when alleged gunman Mangione, wearing a dark hoodie and a gray backpack, stepped from behind a parked car in the pre-dawn darkness. He then pursued Thompson for a few steps, shooting him with a 9mm pistol. Police have said that he fired several rounds, striking Thompson at least once in the back and at least once in the right calf. According to CCTV footage, the gun appeared to jam after every shot, with the shooter reloading the weapon. I also heard reports that he cleared the jams in order to keep firing, and he cleared them with relative ease. The footage shows that the shooter continued to fire at Thompson as he fell to the ground. At the NYPD press conference, it was said that they don't know if this was a professional hit, but it was noted that on the video, the suspect appeared to clear the jams quite easily while firing the pistol, and that the shooter seems proficient in the use of firearms. As I stated earlier, dreamers, we now know that the gun was made with a 3D printer, so it was bound to be flawed. However, based on the way he handled the gun and the gun jamming on the video, he was prepared for that to happen. Later on, I'm going to talk a little bit more about 3D guns, and there's going to be an explanation as to why the gun kept jamming. When the video was further reviewed, it was reported that the gun did appear to have a silencer on it. As I also mentioned earlier, this too was made on a 3D printer. Shortly after the shooting, the gunman fled the scene. He headed northbound into an alleyway between 54th and 55th Streets. He walked west on Avenue of the Americas and eventually got on an e-bike and rode in the direction of Central Park. The bike had a GPS system installed on it, and police were able to contact the manufacturer of that GPS in order to gather more information and details about the movements of the e-bike. At 6:46 a.m., just 2 minutes after the shooting, police officers responded to a 911 call made about a person having been shot in front of the Hilton Hotel. 2 minutes after that, at 6:48 a.m., officers arrived at the scene of the shooting to find Brian Thompson laying on the sidewalk in front of the hotel with gunshot wounds to his back and leg. He was transported to Mount Sinai West Hospital, where he was pronounced dead at 7:12 a.m., just 28 minutes after the shooting. Among the pieces of evidence recovered at the scene, there were 3 pieces of ammunition that were recovered that had the words deny, delay, depose. And just so we're all aware, the word depose has 2 meanings, one of them being to remove from office suddenly or by force. At the same time that police arrived at the scene of the shooting, the alleged gunman was seen entering Central Park at 60th Street. 8 minutes later, at 6:56 a.m., he is seen outside the park on Central Park West, still on his e-bike. At 6:58 a.m., he was at 85th Street and Columbus Avenue, still on his bike. At 7 a.m., the gunman was seen going northbound on 86th Street, and he no longer had his bike. At 7:04 a.m., he was seen getting into a cab headed northbound on 86th at Amsterdam Avenue. At 7:30 a.m., the alleged shooter is seen in the vicinity of the George Washington Bridge near a Port Authority bus station. Also on this day, a reward was offered by the NYPD and subsequently by the FBI, totaling $60,000 for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the gunman. At 8:23 a.m. in Maple Grove, Minnesota, local police arrived at the home of Brian Thompson's wife, Paulette, to notify her of his death. The couple had been living in separate homes less than a mile apart in the suburb for several years, according to the Wall Street Journal. Paulette told NBC News on Wednesday that her husband had been receiving death threats. "There have been some threats," she said. "Basically, I don't know, a lack of coverage. I don't know the details. I just know that there were a couple of people threatening him." The police departments in Maple Grove, where Thompson lived, and in Minnetonka, where UnitedHealthCare is based, both said that they had received no complaints about threats to Thompson. In a side note, Thompson was among 3 UnitedHealthCare executives named in a May lawsuit filed by a Florida pension fund alleging the company concealed a Justice Department antitrust investigation from shareholders while insiders sold stock, including $15 million worth of shares held by Thompson personally. He had not responded to the allegations in court prior to his death. So there's also that's hanging over his head at the time that he was killed. At 9 a.m., Andrew Whitty, chief executive of UnitedHealth Group, UnitedHealthCare's parent company, interrupts the proceedings at the investor conference to announce that the event was being canceled due to a very serious medical situation with one of their team members. "As a result, I'm afraid we're going to have to bring a close to the event today," he added. "I'm sure you'll understand." Wednesday, December 4th through Monday, December 9th. At some point on December 4th, the alleged gunman, Mangione, ended up in Pennsylvania. It's about 100 miles or 160 kilometers from New York City to Philadelphia. Prior to being arrested, Mangione spent time traveling back and forth between both ends of the state of Pennsylvania, as the governor, Josh Shapiro, said in a statement made later on the same day. The suspect was arrested in Altoona, stating, "This suspect traveled between Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, making stops in between." The governor urged anyone who may have seen Mangione during that time to assist in mapping out his whereabouts. "We know that he's been in Pennsylvania for several days, and so part of that investigation will focus on trying to retrace his steps," State Police Lieutenant Colonel George Bivens said at a news conference. "We already identified businesses, for example, that he frequented in this area and activities that he engaged in. That leads us to more evidence, so all of that has become a mountain of evidence that we have to analyze." Monday, December 9th. The day of the arrest, at 9:14 a.m., Altoona police officers were called to a McDonald's for reports of a male matching the description of the UnitedHealthCare CEO murder suspect. A responding officer asked the suspect to lower his mask and asked him whether he has been in New York City recently. The man then became quiet and started to shake. He became visibly nervous, kind of shaking at the question. Altoona Police Chief Derek Swope said, "He didn't really answer it directly, so that statement alone really said a lot. The suspect didn't have to say a lot after that question." The man was taken in for questioning. At 1:45 p.m., New York City Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch announced that Mangione, then considered a person of interest, had been arrested on firearms charges in Altoona. At 6:45 p.m., following a preliminary arraignment in a Pennsylvania courtroom, Mangione was charged with forgery, possession of a firearm without a license, tampering with records or identification, possessing instruments of a crime, and providing false identification to law enforcement authorities. At 10:45 p.m., online court records indicated that Manhattan prosecutors formally charged Mangione with Thompson's murder. He is also charged with 3 counts of criminal possession of a weapon and 1 count of possession of a forged instrument. So what do we know about Luigi Mangione? The following is information from an article on CBSNews.com dated December 14, 2024, written by Alex Sundby, John Doyle, Layla Ferris, Laura Doan, Emma Lee, and Carrie Breen. And the headline reads, What We Know About Luigi Mangione, Suspect Charged in UnitedHealthCare CEO's Killing. I am quoting again directly from the article, so I linked it for you in the show notes as well. It says, New details are emerging about the case against Luigi Mangione, the man charged with murder in the deadly shooting of UnitedHealthCare CEO Brian Thompson in New York City. The 26-year-old, who was identified earlier as a person of interest, was arrested on firearms and other charges in Pennsylvania on Monday, December 9th, after being spotted at a McDonald's in Altoona amid a massive manhunt for the shooter. Here's what we know about Mangione. 1. He could waive extradition to New York to face shooting charges. I am writing the story as it's unfolding, so it's possible that the extradition may have already gone through by the time you hear this, but I don't think so. I think last I heard, Mangione is fighting the extradition, so it's going to take a signing of a warrant from the governor of New York to get him back into the state to face the charges. Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg told reporters on Friday, December 13th, that Mangione could waive extradition at a hearing in Pennsylvania on Tuesday, which is today, the day that I'm writing this. And when I wrote this, I said, if I get news about it today, I'll make sure to include it. It is included at the end of this episode, what happened today. We'll be ready whether he's going to waive extradition or whether he's going to contest extradition, Bragg said during a news conference. 2. Mangione's defense declined to respond to CBS News, citing attorney-client privilege. Mangione added a prominent defense lawyer to his legal team as Manhattan prosecutors worked to return him from Pennsylvania to face murder charges, the Associated Press reported. Karen Friedman Agnifilio, who was a high-ranking deputy in the Manhattan District Attorney's Office for years before entering private practice, has been retained to represent Mangione. Her law firm confirmed in a statement late Friday she is his New York attorney. 3. Mangione was not a UnitedHealthCare customer. The NYPD told CBS News that there are no indications that Mangione was a UnitedHealthCare customer. Officials believe Mangione may have targeted the company because of its status as the largest health insurer in the United States. 4. Mangione is being held under maximum security. Mangione is being held under maximum security at a state correctional facility in Huntington, Pennsylvania. He has not been violent, officials told CBS News. He is not under suicide watch or any kind of psychological order in the prison, corrections officials have said. He is not in solitary confinement, but is in a cell by himself, and he does not get to interact with other inmates. Mangione has not had outside time yet, but will. All inmates, no matter their custody level, get out of cell time, officials stated. 5. Mangione may have traveled to Pennsylvania by train. Following the shooting, investigators have said that the suspect fled into Central Park on an e-bike and then took a cab to the George Washington Bridge bus station in Upper Manhattan. While investigators initially thought the suspect may have left New York City on a bus that departed from the station, NYPD Assistant Commissioner Carlos Nieves told CBS New York on December 12th that they now believe the suspect took the A subway line back down to the Penn Station in Midtown, where they're looking into whether he traveled by train to Pennsylvania. The NYPD was working with Pennsylvania State Police and Altoona Police to track Mangione's movements while he was in Pennsylvania. 6. His notebook says he considered using a bomb. 2 law enforcement sources told CBS News that authorities recovered a notebook from Mangione at the time of his arrest. The sources said in the notebook he wrote that he considered using a bomb but decided on a shooting because it would be more targeted and would not put innocent lives in danger. While in custody in Pennsylvania, Mangione has not made incriminating statements to NYPD investigators, according to police. 7. His fingerprints match prints found near the shooting scene. Fingerprints found on a water bottle and a protein bar near where Thompson was killed match the fingerprints taken from Mangione when he was booked into jail. NYPD Commissioner Jessica Tisch said on December 11th. Police also told CBS News that fingerprints on a phone found at the scene are a match to Mangione's. Investigators also matched a quote-unquote ghost gun that police found with Mangione in Pennsylvania to 3 9mm shell casings from the shooting in New York, according to the NYPD. The fingerprint match was first reported by CNN. It was the first publicly announced forensic evidence linking Mangione to the crime scene. The NYPD received over 400 tips to its Crime Stoppers hotline about this case. All of the tips were vetted, and police said 30 of them were helpful. The New York City Police Foundation was offering a reward of up to $10,000 for information and will vet the tips to determine who gets the reward. Separately, the FBI offered a reward of up to $50,000 for information leading to an arrest and conviction. 8. What do police believe was the motive for the shooting? Investigators working the theory for the motive behind the shooting is animosity towards the healthcare industry. The NYPD said it appears Mangione suffered a debilitating back injury on July 4, 2023, that required a visit to an emergency room and subsequently screws on his spine, according to images posted on social media. According to the NYPD, Mangione was in possession of notebook paper that had written notes that expressed disdain for corporate America, in particular the healthcare industry. This handwritten note has been characterized as a manifesto. When Mangione is extradited back to New York, the NYPD plans to charge him with premeditated first-degree murder, a charge usually reserved for the murder of an NYPD officer, but the district attorney's office has the final discretion on charges. 9. Mangione's mother filed a missing persons report for him before the shooting. Prior to the December 4th shooting, Mangione's mother filed a missing persons report for her son with the San Francisco Police Department, a person close to the investigation told CBS News. According to the San Francisco Standard, the mother filed the report November 18th and told police that she last spoke with him in July. In a statement on December 13th, a spokesperson for the FBI's New York field office said the office received a tip from San Francisco police about the shooting suspect's possible identity. FBI New York conducted routine investigative activity and referred this and other leads to the New York City Police Department as a part of our assistance to them in their investigation, the spokesperson said in a statement to CBS News. CBS News New York learned that after receiving the tip, the NYPD reached out to Mangione's mother on December 8th, one day before his arrest, and she told investigators the surveillance images of the suspect could be her son. 10. Mangione was spotted and arrested in a McDonald's. Mangione, who police said went to Pittsburgh and then Altoona after leaving New York, was arrested at a McDonald's after a customer alerted an employee who called police. Officers questioned Mangione, who they described as acting suspiciously. According to court documents, the Altoona officers found Mangione sitting at a table in the back of the McDonald's wearing a blue medical mask and looking at a laptop with a backpack on the floor near the table. When the officers asked him to pull the mask down, they recognized him from the photos released to the media. Mangione was carrying multiple fraudulent IDs and a U.S. passport, Commissioner Tisch said at a news conference. One of the IDs matched the fake New Jersey ID that the shooting suspect used to check into a Manhattan hostel before the shooting. When the Altoona officers asked Mangione for his ID at the McDonald's, he gave them the New Jersey ID, according to an affidavit submitted with the criminal complaint. When one officer was checking the ID with dispatchers, the other asked Mangione if he had been to New York recently, and said Mangione became quiet and started to shake, according to the affidavit. Mangione provided his real name after he was told he would be arrested if he lied about his identity, according to the affidavit. When an officer asked Mangione why he lied about his name, he allegedly said, quote, "I clearly shouldn't have." Officers found a gun and a suppressor that were consistent with the weapon used in the shooting of Thompson, Commissioner Tisch said. Police said the gun found in his backpack appeared to be a 3D printed ghost gun with a loaded Glock magazine with 6 9mm full metal jacket rounds and a 3D printed silencer. Clothing and a mask consistent with those of the suspect in the case were also recovered, police said. Mangione was charged December 9th with 5 counts in Pennsylvania: forgery, firearms not to be carried without a license, tampering with records or identification, possessing instruments of a crime, and false identification to law enforcement. New York filed the murder charge later that night. Pennsylvania State Police Lieutenant Colonel George Bivens said Mangione was initially cooperative and then stopped cooperating with investigators. 11. Mangione is being held without bail. At an extradition proceeding on December 10th in Pennsylvania, Mangione was denied bail. He contested extradition to New York, and Pennsylvania has 30 days to get a warrant from the New York governor to start the process. A defense attorney for Mangione, Thomas Dickey, that would be his Pennsylvania defense attorney versus his New York one, argued that the state of New York did not provide the defense with the official second-degree murder charges in documents that they were given, and now the defense has 14 days to request a writ of habeas corpus for those, which is meant to protect Mangione from being held indefinitely, wrongfully, or unnecessarily. In New York, the office of the Manhattan District Attorney, Alvin Bragg, confirmed to CBS that prosecutors will seek a governor's warrant to secure Mangione's extradition to Manhattan. As Mangione entered the Blair County Courthouse ahead of the December 10th proceedings, he was aggressive and he had to be contained, shouting that what was happening to him was an insult to the intelligence of the American people. While inside the courtroom, he quietly mumbled and mouthed words while sitting at the defense table. At his office, Dickey told reporters on December 10th that he hadn't seen the video footage of Mangione's outburst, but said hopefully there won't be any more of that. Dickey told reporters that he was hired to represent Mangione and not appointed to the case. He wouldn't identify who hired him, and he wouldn't comment on what Mangione has said to him. Dickey said Mangione would plead not guilty to the Pennsylvania charges and said that he advised Mangione to enter the same plea to the New York charges. Asked to clarify what specific charges Mangione would plead not guilty to, Dickey said, every charge. Remember, and this is not just a small thing, the fundamental concept of American justice is the presumption of innocence until you're proven guilty, beyond a reasonable doubt, and I have seen zero evidence at this point, Dickey said. And, as I mentioned earlier, Mangione has since retained Karen Friedman Agnifilio to represent him in New York. 12. Police say Mangione had handwritten notes expressing his views. A 3-page handwritten document that, quote, speaks to both his motivation and mindset was also recovered from Mangione when he was apprehended by police, according to Commissioner Tisch. NYPD sources referred to the notes as a claim of responsibility, where Mangione attempted to justify his actions. Mangione wrote that the U.S. had, quote, the most expensive healthcare system in the world, but lamented that the country ranks 42nd in life expectancy, according to NYPD sources. Mangione also referred to corporations as a mafiosa that have gotten too powerful, and said such companies abuse the United States, quote, for immense profit. He wrote that others had shown a light on corporations, corruption, and greed in the past, and claimed that he was the first to face it with such brutal honesty. NYPD intelligence officers believe Mangione may have been inspired by Unabomber Ted Kaczynski, with the handwritten note reflecting a similar mindset. Kenny told reporters that officials don't think that there are any specific threats to other people mentioned in that document, but NYPD sources and police are concerned about the risks of extremists viewing Mangione as an example to follow. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro expressed this concern during a news conference on December 9th and strongly condemned both the murderer and those who celebrated it online. Quote, the suspect is a coward, not a hero, he said. 13. He worked at TrueCar, has an Ivy League degree. According to his LinkedIn account, Mangione worked as a data engineer at the car buying website TrueCar, but a company spokesperson told CBS News that Mangione has not worked there since 2023. He graduated from the University of Pennsylvania in 2020, a Penn spokesperson confirmed to CBS News. He received a Master of Science in Engineering with a major in Computer and Information Science and a Bachelor of Science in Engineering, majoring in Computer Science with a minor in Mathematics, the spokesperson confirmed. While at Penn, he worked as a teaching assistant and founded a video game development club, according to his LinkedIn account. At Stanford University in California, Mangione was a head counselor for a pre-collegiate studies program during the summer of 2019, the university said in a statement to CBS News. 14. Mangione appeared to suffer from severe back pain. Mangione's last known address was Honolulu, Hawaii, Kenny told reporters. The surf break co-living community in Honolulu told CBS that Mangione had been a resident at the location in 2022. Sarah Nehemiah, who knew Mangione during his time at Surf Break, said he left the community in April of 2022 due to a lifelong back injury exacerbated by physical activity on the island. According to posts on his Reddit account, Mangione's back pain had been persistent for several years and worsened after surfing in Hawaii. Nehemiah and other members of the Surf Break community lost contact with Mangione after he left, she said. R.J. Martin, a close friend of Mangione's in Hawaii, told CBS News that Mangione was often social except for when he was in severe pain. There were times when he would kind of hide out, and I would only hear about it afterwards, but he's one of those people that was such a gentleman, Martin said. He never complained. He would only tell me about things after the fact. Martin said the pain inhibited him from doing a lot of activities that he wanted to do, but said Mangione was active when not in pain. Martin grew emotional during the interview and said, I just feel heartbroken. Somebody that I loved and cared about could have done something so hideous. The background image on Mangione's X account shows an X-ray of a spine with hardware in it, reflective of previous surgery. It is not known if this is an X-ray of Mangione's spine. An orthopedist told CBS News that the image appeared to show a hardware fusion, likely for a condition called, spondylolisthesis? Spondylolisthesis? Is that how it's? I don't know. Whatever. Which is when a vertebrae slips out of alignment. Mangione referenced the condition on Reddit and other social media accounts. He said on Reddit that he had spinal surgery in July of 2023. In October, he indicated that the operation had gone well, saying he was taking 0 pain meds and hadn't had a bad day since the surgery 8 days before. In February of 2024, Mangione said the surgery came, quote, after 1.5 years of failed conservative treatment. 15. Mangione is related to a prominent Maryland family. He was born and raised in Maryland, Kenny said. He's related to a prominent Maryland family that owns country clubs, healthcare facilities, and real estate companies, CBS News Baltimore reported. He is also a cousin of Maryland State Delegate Nino Mangione, who represents parts of Baltimore County. Mangione's paternal grandparents, Nicholas and Mary Mangione, were real estate developers who purchased the Turf Valley Country Club in 1978 and Hayfields Country Club in Hunt Valley in 1986. They founded Lorien Health Systems in 1977 and operated WCBM, a Baltimore radio station. Mangione's family said December 9th in a statement, unfortunately, we cannot comment on the news reports regarding Luigi Mangione. We only know what we have read in the media. Our family is shocked and devastated by Luigi's arrest. We offer our prayers to the family of Brian Thompson, and we ask people to pray for all involved. We are devastated by this news. Mangione graduated in 2016 from the Gilman School, an all-boys private school in Baltimore, according to his LinkedIn account. He was the school's valedictorian and captained its robotics team. He also received a scholarship prize in 2014. He also volunteered at Lorien Health Systems in 2014, according to his LinkedIn. A former classmate who wishes to remain anonymous out of respect for the Mangione family said that he met Mangione in middle school and remained close to him throughout high school, told CBS News that Mangione's a good guy who didn't have any enemies. The former classmate said the two lost touch after high school, but said that he felt sympathetic when he heard Mangione was a person of interest in the shooting. I don't think he's a crazy person. I hope that there's a public trial and he gets a chance to explain how all of this happened in court. 15. Mangione appeared isolated before his arrest. In the months leading up to Mangione's arrest, posts tagging his account on social media platform X indicate his friends may have been trying to contact him. His last post on the site was in June. Nobody's heard from you in months, one post from October read. Another post from July said, I don't know if you're okay or just in a super isolated place and have no service, but I haven't heard from you in months. Mangione traveled to Asia for several months in early 2024, according to social media posts and people who spoke to him at the time. He posted about his travels on Reddit in April, saying he had visited various countries during the past 2 months. Gurwinder Bogal, who said he corresponded with Mangione via email and video call during this time, said he believes Mangione was in Japan until at least early May. 16. Mangione reviewed Unabomber's manifesto and books about back pain. On the book review site Goodreads, Mangione often reviewed and rated books. His activity there included a 4-star rating and review of Industrial Society and Its Future, written by Theodore John Kaczynski, also known as the Unabomber. 2 healthcare-related books are also on his read tab from 2022, including Crooked, Outwitting the Back Pain Industry and Getting on the Road to Recovery, and Back Mechanic. Nehemiah from Surfbreak said that Mangione returned to Hawaii briefly in early 2023 and started a book club. However, several members left due to discomfort in book choices. She did not elaborate on what those books were. So I visited Reddit to see what everyone had to say about Brian Thompson and Luigi Mangione over there, and I came to find an article in the Daily Beast that reported that the moderators removed a thread where actual physicians were expressing how they felt about the slain CEO. The headline reads, Moderators delete Reddit thread as doctors torch dead UnitedHealthCare CEO. When other human lives are deemed worthless, it's not surprising to have others view your life of no value as well, one medical doctor wrote. The article was published December 5th and was written by Sean Craig. I'm going to also link this in my show notes. The article says, in part, doctors in one of the internet's top medical communities have turned on the murdered UnitedHealthCare CEO Brian Thompson in such brutal fashion that Reddit moderators deleted a thread on the killing. The moderators of r/medicine closed the thread, posted Wednesday after news broke that Thompson was shot dead outside the New York Hilton after it racked up over 500 replies. The commenters overwhelmingly criticized and satirized the insurer's alleged denial of coverage to sick and dying Americans in order to juice profits. The top comment, which received hundreds of supporting upvotes from other users, mocked UnitedHealthCare's notorious track record for refusing to pay out insurance claims and was written as a lengthy spoof rejection letter from the company. Addressed to an unnamed applicant, it says, following a careful review of the claims submitted for emergency services on December 4th, 2024, it informs them that they are being rejected for the coverage because, quote, you failed to obtain prior authorization before seeking care for the gunshot wound to your chest. If you would like to appeal the fatal gunshot, please call 1-800-555-1234 with case number 123456789P in order to initiate a peer-to-peer within 48 hours of the fatal gunshot. Another comment said, I've never wished a man dead, but I've read some obituaries with great pleasure. Dozens and dozens more comments expressed a similar sentiment. The original thread may have been deleted, but criticism of Thompson on Reddit has not died down. Roughly 16 hours after the deleted post was made in r/medicine, another user made a separate post soliciting thoughts on the murder. It has remained up. And Dreamers, I went to go and look at it, and I found a comment about the 3D gun that Mangione allegedly used, referred to as a ghost gun. I wanted to know a little bit more about it, so I'm going to share what that commenter had to say after this article that I'm reading to you. I'll have a final word from the CEO of United Health Group, and then we will end this episode for now. Perhaps we will revisit Luigi when his case is finished making its way through the system. Hopefully, we'll all still be around by then. But anyway, the Daily Beast article continued. As with the previous thread, some comments contain humor or outrage expressed at UnitedHealthCare, but others, including from doctors and medical professionals, offer incisive and unsparing critiques of Thompson's business practices. One medical doctor, whose identity the Daily Beast confirmed, commented with sympathy for Thompson's family and said that the killer should be charged with murder, but then wondered about the damage the CEO had done. Quote, "I cannot even guess how many person years UnitedHealthCare has taken from their patients and their families through denials," they wrote. "It has to be on the order of millions. His death won't make that better, but it's hard for me to sympathize when so many people had suffered because of this company. What has bothered me the most is that people put fiduciary responsibility, i.e. profits, above human lives. None more than this company, as run by him," wrote another medical doctor who also spoke to the Daily Beast to confirm their identity. "When other human lives are deemed worthless, it's not surprising to have others view yours as of no value as well." The moderators of the subreddit told the Daily Beast in a message that they removed the original post because it was unproductive, a time suck for the mods, without a good source, being brigaded, arguably against Reddit's terms of service, and featured too many inappropriate comments. The site's communities are moderated by a team of volunteers. It wasn't because of criticism of business practices, the statement said. "We criticize insurance business practices frequently on here." Under Thompson's leadership, UnitedHealthCare faced intense criticism for being one of America's most ruthlessly profit-minded, money-making healthcare firms. According to research by Value Penguin, citing an in-network claim data, it is the worst company for paying claims, with about 1/3 of their claims denied. In September, a Senate report excoriated, and I didn't know what excoriate, I think it's excoriated means. So for those of you who are in the same boat as me, it means to severely criticize. So, a Senate report excoriated UnitedHealthCare and two other large insurers, Humana and CVS, for allegedly denying patients access to post-acute care in order to increase profits. So, I mentioned that I ran across a comment that provided a little more information about ghost guns, so I wanted to tell you some of what Reddit user Capital Traffic 6974 had to say about it, as it was reported that Mangione appeared to be pretty adept at the use of the firearm that he made or had made that was used to murder Thompson. The comment said, "It's not that hard to become firearms proficient all by yourself. There's a huge amount of information on the internet and on YouTube about firearms and how to assemble them and how to use them. The first thing is to dispel the myth about 3D printed ghost guns. Almost never is the entire gun printed out of plastic or PLA or whatever. And just so for your information, PLA is polylactic acid, and it's a biodegradable plastic. Usually the only part that is 3D printed is the federally regulated part, the receiver, the part that is required by law to carry a serial number that has to be registered with the federal firearms license when the gun is transferred from the manufacturer or gun retailer to the person now owning the gun. The receiver, by definition, is the part of the gun that receives the bullet before it is transferred into the chamber of the barrel. Legally, the receiver is the registered part of the gun. It is the gun as far as the government is concerned. As it turns out, the receiver of the gun is not subject to a huge amount of high pressure or wear and tear, and after a while, with the M16s and other guns and then pistols, the receiver came to be made out of a lighter aluminum to save weight. The revolution with Glocks is that they recognized the main body of the pistol, which included the receiver, could be made of plastic, and the whole thing could be molded in one piece. This piece would then be stamped with the federally required serial number. When 3D printers using plastics like PLA came around, people realized that this plastic part could easily be printed. This is what made them ghost guns, the fact that the receiver part of the gun would now not have a serial number. Now, the rest of the pistol is usually still made of metal, usually from aftermarket parts, and this would include the barrel and the chamber, and the bolt carrier group, the trigger group, the magazine, and the various other little parts that go into the gun that do experience considerably higher pressures and wear and tear, where it would only last a few rounds if those parts were made of plastic instead of metal. Because Glocks are so widespread, these aftermarket parts are so widely and easily available through online sales and at gun stores. Threaded Glock barrels are easily available online and in large gun stores also. You need a threaded barrel to attach a silencer. Buying from a store or a gun show would allow somebody to pay cash for these parts. As for the silencer, the easiest way to make your own is to buy what's called a solvent trap. The comment said to Google 9mm solvent trap and that you can find a lot of them still readily available online. The commenter continued, I don't know if anybody sells these solvent traps directly for cash. These things only require that you drill a hole in one end cap and the thing is ready to be screwed onto a threaded barrel. And by the way, I did Google 9mm solvent trap, and for those of you who are dumb about guns like me, it has something to do with cleaning the gun. Anyway, the Reddit comment goes on to talk about how looking at the video of the shooting, which he linked, and I will link also for you in the comments, and I put that it is graphic. He said that it definitely looks like Mangione was proficient or he practiced a lot and he knew how to clear up the jams pretty quickly. He said the reason why the gun Mangione allegedly used did not cycle was because it had a silencer attached to it and it lacked a piston adapter that the gun parts that he had, which are from a Glock, require. They require this additional adapter in order for it to not jam. So the head of United Group, its CEO, Andrew Witte, finally broke his silence about Brian Thompson's murder 9 days after the shooting. According to an article on abcnews.com, Witte paid tribute to the slain CEO while acknowledging that the healthcare system does not work as well as it should. It was in the op-ed section of the New York Times. He wrote, there has been an enormous outpouring of support for Thompson and his loved ones after the UnitedHealthCare leader was shot and killed in New York City, but company employees have also faced threats and vitriol. Quote, no employees, be they the people who answer customer calls or nurses who visit patients in their homes, should have to fear for their loved ones' safety, Witte wrote. We know that the health system does not work as well as it should, and we understand people's frustrations with it. No one would design a system like the one we have, Witte wrote. And no one did. It's a patchwork built over decades. Witte further stated that he was willing to partner with anyone who could help the system work better, stating, clearly we are not there yet. We understand and share the desire to build a healthcare system that works for everyone. That is the purpose of our organization. He further stated that Thompson was among the people working in this industry who tried to do their best for those they serve, and it was Thompson's rural upbringing that inspired his ethos as CEO. He never forgot where he came from because it was the needs of people who live in places like Jewell, Iowa, that he considered first in finding ways to improve care, Witte wrote. When a colleague proposed a new idea to Brian, he would always ask, would you want this for your family? If not, end of discussion. Witte added that Thompson was, quote, never content with the status quo and praised the CEO for advocating for ideas that were, quote, aimed at making healthcare more affordable, more transparent, more intuitive, more compassionate, and more human. That's Brian's legacy, one that we will carry forward by continuing our work to make the healthcare system work better for everyone. And as I wrapped up writing this episode, I got breaking news that Luigi Mangione was indicted by the Manhattan DA's office. The charges include first-degree murder, which is elevated from second-degree murder listed on his warrant, but he's still charged with 2 counts of second-degree murder, one of them being second-degree murder in an act of terrorism, 2 counts of second-degree criminal possession of a weapon, 4 counts of third-degree criminal possession of a weapon, 1 count of fourth-degree criminal possession of a weapon, and 1 count of second-degree criminal possession of a forged instrument. And that is the latest that I have for you on this ongoing and developing story. I'll get this recorded for you, well, I just did, and uploaded as soon as possible. It'll be tonight. And I look forward to discussing this further with you on all the social medias. All right, that's all I have. I want to thank you all for listening. Don't forget to take a look at Patreon. There's some new content up over there this week also. And as always, take care, be safe, and sweet dreams.